Everyone. Welcome to this fireside chat. My name is Leon Godwin. As usual, I am your Principal Cloud Evangelist. And today I'm joined by Sophie Marshall. Sophie is our Director of Marketing and Alliances. And we're here to discuss a topic that I'm actually quite passionate about, which is funding. And this is all about how you can secure funding to accelerate your business goals. So let's jump in. So welcome, Sophie. Welcome and welcome back again.
Thank you.
So we're seeing a huge amount of interest and quite a lot of change that is going on with the Microsoft funding program. So from your perspective, what do you think, can you touch on those changes, and also what are the valuable areas that customers should be focusing on right now when it comes to funding?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And thanks very much for having me again, Leon. It's great to be here. So I think the key thing with the Microsoft funding is you've got to think about, in today's climate, every business is looking for ways to innovate, stay competitive, but without overstretching budgets. And that's really where that Microsoft funding comes in. So the programs are designed by Microsoft to support IT strategy for the year ahead, whether your goal is to optimize cloud adoption, enhance your security, look at new AI solutions. The funding can really help accelerate your journey, help you achieve those objectives more quickly. What's really interesting that we've seen this year with Microsoft is they've really increased the pots of funding this year. So they've increased the different types of funding that you've got access to and really invested a lot more into that funding. And they've also made it a lot more easy to access. So unsure of people on the call, but previously when you worked with Microsoft, you'd have to go to Microsoft. It was quite a cumbersome process to go and get access to the funding. We'd have to work with the Microsoft teams, and actually ended up hindering and slowing down the process rather than helping to speed it up. So what Microsoft have done is really put an emphasis on now and helping to accelerate this by making it a lot easier for the partners to go and access that funding for the customers. And we can actually get access to the funding within about 24 hours now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's like a strategic co-investment, because we also invest as part of those activities. And so it's not just about offsetting costs. The potential of the cloud is so enormous, and the ability to transform organizations is so profound that it's not just about offsetting those costs, it's about delivering meaningful change. So for us, as we work with customers, let's touch on the sort of subject of sort of modernizing, for example, their desktop applications or other business applications. It's not just about migration, it's also about modernization. Can you touch on how these kind of migration and modernization activities provide that sort of foundational support, say, for AI, which is a huge topic, and we're seeing lots and lots and lots of interest, and a lot of my day is spent staying on top of all these AI developments, so our customers don't have to.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I think, and as we're going to talk through today, we're going to touch on, I guess, many different parts of the journey where people could be. So I think, so yeah, as we start off here, we talk about things like application modernization. That's really about how we're helping customers look at either updating legacy applications using cloud native technologies, so like using Azure to improve the performance and improve scalability, etc. Or it's about how we can look at legacy applications for those customers and think, actually, how can we take these applications and make them more innovative, and really look at how we can add and integrate features around AI and automation, which is what a lot of organizations are really focusing in on that. So for those sort of types of projects, Microsoft have a very specific pot of funding for that. Newer for this year, all around looking at AI apps, agents, and how we can look at developing those things. And this funding really supports looking at helping customers to assess where they are, what it is that they want to look to do. What are those apps that they could be either lifting and shifting into the cloud and modernizing as they go, but then or looking at how we can actually help them innovate and add in and infuse AI and automation to them. And then off the back of that assessment, we can look at building out a proof of value for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the AI journey, I think people sometimes make the mistake that it's just a switch you turn on. I'll have one unit of AI, please. But actually, there's a lot of kind of scaffolding that app modernization relates to. So you brought up agents there. Agents use tools. There are lots of cloud native infrastructure that fundamentally aid agents to use tools, to host those tools, provide that capability. And then having access to that funding to provide that scaffolding before you've even delivered any of the AI, that's a really sort of crucial component. And I think it requires that kind of strategic mindset. So can you just touch on, from your perspective, why sort of modernization is such a crucial step for organizations that are looking to become AI ready?
Yeah, of course. So if you think about the modernization piece, like you said, depending on where a customer is on their journey, you can look at either that all organizations will have legacy applications that they are using. And it's really now about looking at, not only you've got these legacy applications, which is also where, when we're looking at doing things like AI and data and AI projects, agents, kind of building that overlay onto it, they've got to get that information from somewhere within the organization. So it's also about how we make it more accessible for the agents and for AI to go and actually find that data. But also it's about how we can really help improve the performance of it as well. So if you think about it, when you're using AI or you're using agents, there is a kind of a thought process, or a lot of people think, it's quite instant. It's something that you should be able to get quite rapidly. If we're using legacy applications for people to be able to go and get that information, or that's what we're using as our data sets, then it's a real issue for people then when we're trying to build on top of it. I think it's that old ad lib, isn't it? It's like rubbish in, rubbish out. And we're going to probably talk about this a lot more later on as well. But really, that's when we're looking at, that's why we really got to help them when we're looking at that modernization piece. It's about really identifying and understanding what the customer need is and what they want to go. So for those sorts of things, as Cloud Direct, we actually do those workshops. We actually fund them ourselves for our customers to really help them understand as is state, but also where they want to be. Also to give them a bit more of an idea of the actual technology themselves. There's so much out there, and I know that you do quite a lot of those, so you can probably touch on what it is that we go through in a lot more detail. Then from once we've done that workshop and kind of given them more of a basic understanding, it's then we can help organizations to actually identify one, maybe two key applications that would benefit them most from that modernization, and actually the ones that would really help an organization show the value and the benefit, because I think that's really key when we're looking at this. You can come to the table with 1,000 ideas, and everybody's got all those ideas, but what's really key is choosing specific ones to hone in on, so that we can really help them show the value back into the business. And then from there, that's where we then come in and can help perform that whole proof of value engagement to really demonstrate the Azure application platform, how AI services can then help transform those applications. And like I've said, Cloud Direct will invest, as we talked about earlier, we're really key in co-investing as well. So it's not just Microsoft and the customer, it's also us investing in that relationship too. So we'll do that. And then the funding kicks in and can really help cover some of those initial critical steps around the assessment and the proof of value, which helps reduce risk and see the potential impact firsthand as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, as you mentioned, I do a number of these workshops, and what I found is the journey from where you are today to that first assessment can feel quite a large step, especially when it involves technologies that are relatively new and maybe unknown, or they don't have that depth and comfort. So the workshops that I provide and Cloud Direct provide are all about gaining that understanding about that sort of foundational knowledge about those technologies, and then understanding the use cases, and we can explore many use cases that would be transformative. And then how do you assess which use cases are the right use cases to go for? Once you've got those kind of elements, this is going to deliver value, this is the projects I want to go and do first, then your assessment is done within the framework of that is my objective that I want to do. And then obviously we then move into the proof of value. And I think we've done a number of proof of values for organizations. I know we did something quite recently for a non-profit. They had a really interesting challenge in terms of they rely on their donors quite a lot to deliver. This was all about food being distributed to those in need. But their volunteer network isn't always 100% reliable. And when it isn't reliable, they have to then go and use contractors, and those contractors come at a cost. So we put together a proof of value around a machine learning model that would help identify when is the best time to go and distribute, what are the personas, the behaviors, factoring in weather and transportation and protests and things like that, to be able to optimize that spend so they're not having to unnecessarily spend donors' money on resources that could be delivered by the vendor network. And I think those kind of exploring those very specific business use cases is of tremendous value, as opposed to that, one unit of AI, please.
So if you look at that example that you just mentioned for that customer as well, it's also uncovering things that you probably you didn't know were going to be the impact. So obviously, like you just mentioned, their weather was a huge impact. That actually, depending if it was raining or really good weather, really impacted what they could do. I believe as well. So when we looked at how we could help them model that, we've got it to like a 93% accuracy just from a proof of value. So that's not even something in production. That is from a 4-week proof of value with 93% accuracy that we can actually predict and help them model what we look at for the volunteers. So that sort of thing is really showing impact really quickly back into the organization. And I think that's what we really need to look at when we're looking at, to be honest, any of these funding pots, when we're looking at those, what we can do with Microsoft, and what we can look at those initial, instead of it being like we're trying to boil the ocean in one hit, those very easily to digest distinct steps that we go through. So an assessment, a POV, before we go into that full scale deployment, means that we can show value. It reduces that risk, but then it also really quickly makes people excited about what we can be doing next as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. Let's pivot a little, because we've kind of touched on AI, and I was really keen that the audience understand that there are significant pots of money, and I think we rank, is it third in the whole of Europe in terms of securing funding for our customers, and we're fighting to get up to number 2. We work really hard for our customers to be able to mitigate that cost of change. But speaking of change, we've seen a lot of activities in the on-premise world, especially when it comes to, for example, the acquisition of VMware. That has created a good deal of uncertainty. There are a number of challenges with Citrix that are creating a number of issues and uncertainty for organizations. So can we just touch on how a migration to a cloud platform like Azure might support a movement from on-premise VDI or RDS type solutions to Azure, and what's available to help with that change?
Of course, yeah. So like you said, there has been quite a lot of disruption in the last year or so around some of the acquisitions that have happened, things around increases in pricing, etc., around that. So we've seen a lot of movement in this, and we're working really closely with some of our partners around this as well, with the likes of people like Nerdio, to really help customers move to Azure Virtual Desktops, so to AVD. So when you're looking at migrating the virtual desktops from on-prem, it really offers a boost in that efficiency and security. But like you said as well, with a lot of the uncertainty in the legacy vendor market, it would be around that costing as well. So there's a lot now we're seeing where we're speaking to customers who know they need to renew, they're coming up for renewals, but actually some of those renewals are coming very late in the process. We're talking about a couple of weeks, maybe max a month before they're actually meant to be renewing. So actually they're being locked in. So what we're really trying to do is have these conversations early with our customers as well, so we can start that process. So we're almost starting to move them and migrate them, so that when we get to that renewal thing, everything is tested, etc., and they're already happy to go once that switchover happens, which we can do within a number of months to kind of get that sorted. So the process really involves a couple of key steps here. So again, we do a workshop if we need to, so a Cloud Direct funded workshop that you can run with our customers to really understand what it is that they're currently using, what we could do, get more for them, what Azure would give the customer, etc. Then it would be about an assessment to understand what that existing environment looks like. Then off the back of that, we'd set up a secure landing zone in Azure for them, and then deploy the VDs and applications into the cloud for them. It really allows them to have greater flexibility and scalability, but it also means that they're optimizing their Azure environment, they're optimizing their Azure spend as well. And also it means that they're not then fixed into these traditional on-premise setups, and they've got a lot more flexibility within being able to scale up and scale down the solutions as well.
Absolutely. And we were talking off camera earlier. AVD saved my life last night. I'm the other side of the world at the moment, and my laptop died. My operating system came completely corrupt. There was nothing I could do to recover it. All I had was a mobile phone. But from that mobile phone, I was able to spin up an Azure virtual desktop. I would be able to download the tools and what have you that I needed. I had a USB stick that I could stick in my phone, and without AVD, I would not have been able to recover and make this call today. So yeah, having that kind of flexibility, be able to spin up something on demand. I needed it for about an hour to help me out so I could go and get my laptop rebuilt. It was an absolute lifesaver. So yeah, I find that kind of flexibility powerful. I appreciate that's a rather unusual use case, but it is quite powerful. So can we just touch on the funding programs when it comes to those AVD, those virtual desktop type infrastructures? What might that look like?
Yeah, of course. I really love that example as well, Leon. And like you said, completely, I'm hoping our customers aren't coming to those with us at 1 o'clock in the morning when something like that has happened, but also we can help when it does happen. And like you see, there's that real ability to be as flexible as is needed. So for these sorts of projects, Microsoft have got a specific funding pot available, which is all around virtual desktop infrastructure migration, which is like perfect for this. So this program provides the fundings for us to be able to offer expert guidance throughout the project, covers all those key milestones that we've talked about, from assessments, compatibility, looking at landing zone setup, and then actually all the deployment itself. Like we said before, this co-investment helps to offset the costs as well. And at the moment, there's Microsoft is seeing a real shift and a real need in the market around this as well. So they've actually really upped the amount of funding that's available for this pot of funding as well, because they're seeing a real drive of it in the next 12 months, that customers are going to be looking to be able to do these migrations with all of the turmoil in the market at the moment.
Yeah, I think speaking of turmoil, I just want to touch on security. So, for example, I know Microsoft have quadrupled the amount of their investment in their own platform when it comes to security. But I believe equally they've increased the amount of funding that's available for projects like Defender and other Microsoft technology. So is it worth just touching on that sort of that security foundation and what's available? Because one of the things I see, I often do talks around security, and I follow the news quite extensively when it comes to security. There is a paradigm change going on in the landscape. AI is absolutely a force for good, but there are those that will want to use it for not so good. And that the speed, for example, that AI is able to be used to compromise networks is profound. So having that kind of greater agility and security posture is probably even more important this in 2025 than it was, say, in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to security, like you said, it's all over the news. Like, I'm assuming most people on this call have seen what has happened this year alone, and a lot of the big retailers, right? Security is really paramount. And like you say, as we're shifting as well more into looking at, AI and things like that, it's becoming even more paramount of understanding and of securing the environment. So like you've said, when it comes to Microsoft, they're really doubling down on security, both internally for themselves, for partners, but also for customers as well. So actually what they've done this year, and which they started to pilot last year, but they've properly widely rolled out this year, is around looking at how they can make sure that we as partners are attaching Microsoft Defender for Cloud to projects when we're working with our partners. So really going with our customers. So really looking at that security landscape, whether that's data security, the security of the actual platforms itself, etc. It's really about how we can attach that security piece. So actually, say for example, where we were looking to do a migrate and modernize deployment for a customer, right? So you like lift and shift to the cloud or etc., or change it from IaaS to PaaS, for example. Instead of it just being that lift and shift of the deployment and we're moving it into the cloud, you actually get additional funding this year as well. If we then use the Microsoft Security Suite, for example, we attach Microsoft Defender for the cloud, because Microsoft wants partners to be pushing that towards customers, and they want customers to be using the security solutions that they have. So you actually get more funding from Microsoft when you are implementing the tools like that, because it not only helps Microsoft, it helps the customers, and it helps partners to then service those customers as well. So it's really about, they're really doubling down and trying to help and push customers towards using those security solutions, because they understand, as anyone does, how important they've become. And I think a lot of our customers are seeing a lot more of that now. You know, if things like this can hit M&S and Co-op, which are big known brand names, it can happen to anybody. And I think the other thing that's really happened this year is when some of these breaches and some of these security things have happened, you can actually see the long-term effects as well on that. I don't know about you guys, but I've got a cart around the corner from me and they didn't have food for the best part of 2 weeks. It was just insanity. So really like I said, Microsoft this year are really trying to push customers to think about having that security and putting that in early in those projects. So actually they're secure from the start, rather than it being an afterthought once you've got through the project.
Okay, that's an interesting point. And before I just jump on to the next one, if anyone in the audience has any specific questions about funding, there is a chat feature that you can go and use. Feel free to go and put your questions in there, and I'm sure Soph and I will be more than happy to respond to those. You also touched on IaaS and PaaS, and just before I sort of talk about that, you know, because one of the advantages I see in terms of moving your maybe non-desktop workloads to the cloud is the ability to be able to innovate. If you buy on-prem, it's quite common to say, I've invested in a load of compute on-prem. I've invested in some SAN storage, networking type solutions. And that tends to go in a 3-5 year kind of procurement life cycle, which means your ability to respond to emerging threats tends to go in a 5-year buying cycle. And these are kind of whereas the speed of innovation in the cloud is so great that if you find yourself in a position where you need to be able to recover or become more robust or implement newer technologies to improve your security posture, you're not constrained by those kind of 5-year procurement life cycles. You can actually deploy these things relatively quickly. So I do see the cloud becoming even more valuable in terms of its value prop overall compared with on-prem. And you did touch on IaaS and PaaS, and can we just explore around those kind of workloads that we have when it comes to migrating, and what support is available from Microsoft when it comes to those kind of movement of workloads to the cloud?
Yeah, of course. So when we're looking at moving the workloads to the cloud, like you mentioned, so the pot of funding for this would be the core, migrate, and modernize piece. What's interesting about that is it's called core, migrate, and modernize. So I think that's really key here. So when you're looking at whether you're moving into the cloud, so moving from on-prem up into Azure, which is really a fundamental step when you think about it, about modernizing your IT estate, but then kind of getting ready and innovating for the future. When it's also having that thought of, right, are we just lifting and shifting? Or as we're doing that, do we want to look at what our state looks like? And actually, instead of just doing a direct lift and shift, do we want to modernize certain things? Do we want to look at how we want to actually not just put it up into a cloud server, or do we want to actually change how we fundamentally do things, add in additional security to that? Maybe we want, it's kind of that whole piece around, no, it's not just the migration. I think that's the really key bit here. It's the modernization of it as well. So actually looking at how you modernize your legacy estate and make it more optimized for performance, and how it can actually help dramatically reduce some of your infrastructure costs as well. But it also means that you're in a better place to then be able to scale as you go into the future, and you've got a more robust but also a more secure base for them to be able to innovate on in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. And of course, that's one of the advantages of the Microsoft Suite, the level of integration. If you're moving virtual desktop, there are a whole bunch of technologies that are aligned to that end user compute stack that are integrated. And if you want to take it up to another level and you want to introduce other security products within your server workloads, you've got that level of integration, and it kind of can all roll up into whether it be a Sentinel or a Purview, depending on what your particular needs are. So can you just touch on maybe some of the steps that might be covered and what a customer would expect from that sort of core migration and modernization program?
Yeah, of course. So again, Microsoft's funding is brilliant. It really helps with the initial analysis and then looking at how we do the actual migrations. But again, some of the pieces around the initial bits of what is an ideal cloud operating model, what is the ideal state we want to get to, isn't actually part of some of the process. So again, we can offer that as part of our Cloud Direct funded workshop, so we can actually help customers look at what that would look like. Then once we've done that, we then do a really comprehensive analysis of their current IT infrastructure, and we build out a migration plan of what that would look like using either internal Microsoft systems or some third parties partners that we use who are very closely aligned to Microsoft. And then this can cover a variety of workloads, right? So it's anything from Windows Server, we can look at Linux, SQL Server, open source databases, etc. And it's really, again, looking at not just what the migration plan looks like, but also if there needs to be a modernization plan as well as part of that. And then what the funding then also allows us to do is make sure that we can give you the expert guidance that's needed to execute that successful migration, and also includes that security bit as well. So making it a secure platform as well. And it really gives a really end-to-end comprehensive approach and project plan and project implementation to really get those foundations right. So you've got the infrastructure ready to then innovate on going into the future.
Excellent. And I think that's kind of a key point, because it doesn't matter where you are on your journey. I think there are opportunities here from funding, whether it be from Microsoft or from Cloud Direct. Whether you're looking at workshops to better understand where you are and what the options are and what the right next steps are, whether it's undertaking a proof of value, be that on AI, security, data, virtual desktops, your other cloud native services or moving workloads, there are funding opportunities available to organizations, and the speed at which we can secure that is significant. Just before I go into another point I wanted to bring up, I have seen a question which I will answer, which is coming, which is this section being recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. They were particularly interested in VMware, AVD, and security, and especially around funding for proof of value, and they'd like to share that with other execs. So yes, indeed, this is being recorded, and we make a point of actually putting these on our YouTube channel as well. So absolutely, those will be available to you. So let's dive into our sort of broader questions. Can you give some examples about how organizations have maximized their funding opportunities when it comes to delivering a different project? I'm thinking more about stuff that we've done for customers in that space.
Yeah, of course. I love talking about this bit because it's always like that whole bit of, I can talk about funding all day long, but then it's really like how we've brought it to life. So yeah, of course. So like I mentioned, right, I think the starting point with all of this is, and where a lot of our customers have started, is always, there's all these different options from Microsoft, right? And at the end of this, I will put my email in the chat. If people have any questions, they are more than welcome to reach out to me, because I can talk about this all day long. So I'm more than happy to help anyone if they've got additional questions. But like I've mentioned, they have lots of funding options that the customers can use, but it doesn't always cover everything, especially some of those initial workshops. And that's where, as Cloud Direct, we've really invested into making sure that we've got those initial workshops to help customers to understand more about the technology, get a bit more of an understanding around what it actually, how we can help, discuss what kind of technology they want, what support they need, and really help with some of that ideation, the business value creation as well, because I think that's a really key thing when going back into businesses. So we've got those Cloud Direct funded workshops. We've got a number of them, everything from the cloud operating model. We do things around AI. We've got things around data platform. We've also got quite a lot around things like virtual desktops, and we've also now Leon, as I'm gonna do this one for you as well. I've asked Leon as well if he can do me an AI agents one as well, to talk about AI agents, because Leon's very passionate about it. So we've got all of that. Once we've done those initial workshops, it really helps us to then determine the funding that we think customers can actually use, and then what's most appropriate for the solution they're trying to get to. It's very much not saying, right, we want to do this is the funding pot. It's like, right, this is as an organization where we want to get to, and then we can always help build out the stages, and when we can align where the funding can help that as well. So if I just kind of pick up on a couple of examples. So we've worked really closely with a large industrial services firm who actually needed our help in proving the value of their new dynamic CRM implementation. They were rolling out across about 20 countries at the time. They had a really tight deadline, and they really needed to prove that the system was actually being effective, and they actually were getting value out of it. So this is where we came in and helped them to build out a data platform where they could start self-serving and seeing the value that the CRM solution was actually providing. So the initial plan was to create a proof of concept, so a really easy lifting, like proof of concept, proof of value in a couple of weeks. But actually, we really quickly, off the back of one of those initial workshops, realized that actually it was better to actually build out a robust pilot. This then meant we could avoid that whole bit of having to start again with the proof of concept. And I think that's really key as well. That's a real step that we make a point of, is in that once you've done the assessment, when we are building something out, we build out a proof of value or a proof of concept or a pilot. Insert the word that you'd like to use there. I think they're all very much the same thing. I get told a lot that they are not, but I still think they feel very much the same thing. Always an argument I have with our consultants, but basically that stage is not for us to build something that we can just throw away. Our whole premise when we build something like that, any sort of proof of value, is really about how we can then roll it out and actually build upon it. So it is secure, it is governed, it's robust, it's like a proper, it's not just something that you could like spin up and throw away. It's actually there that you can then build on as we go forward, and it actually means that we can speed up the production and deployment much easier as well, because we've already got it built. So we co-designed and deployed that data platform, I think it was in about 14 weeks, enabled all the real-time reporting that it needed to actually prove back the value of the Dynamics 365 rollout. It also included a whole load of internal upskilling that we helped with as well for the internal team at the customer. And we actually managed to get about $30,000 worth of Microsoft funding to help speed up that process and also to build out that platform. We've actually now got about 20 use cases that are now in development, so they'll be deployed onto that platform. Another example, because like I said, I can talk about these all day, is actually a UK energy supplier that we work with, who faced really long customer service resolution times. They were about a day and a half to actually be able to resolve any of the calls they were getting or emails they were getting in through their customer service desk. So we actually built out a platform using a lot of the Microsoft AI tools to automate a lot of the email responses, how they access data through CRM, the knowledge bases, etc., and actually help them reduce those resolution time from a day and a half to under 2 hours, which was a huge, not only saving for the organization, but really improved their efficiency. And actually now that scalable platform that we've built, which was again a proof of value that we got into production, is now driving a much wider AI innovation across the whole business around what else they could be using the platform for, what other parts of the business that they could be rolling out into, and now actually looking at how they can make AI part of their everyday lives rather than just something they wanted to try. They've now seen the value from it, seen how we can really help with it, and now it's almost like it's exploded internally and they want to be using it as much as they can.
I think that's a really key point, because what I see when organizations, they have a finite level of knowledge when it comes to AI, and they see the journey as crawl, walk, run. And that makes sense, especially if you're doing it in a DIY kind of mode where you don't necessarily have the knowledge. So you'll start with really simple use cases with low risk. But when you do a proof of value and you are getting it funded by Microsoft and you have experts like us delivering it, you don't have to start off in the crawling stages. You can start going, this is going to deliver meaningful value. So I gave that example earlier on of an organization that adopted a machine learning model. Now, to many people in the audience, they think machine learning, that's kind of like end stage. That's actually you call run into a full-on sprint. But that was their first step, because we were able to help with that. The cost of change was mitigated by Microsoft. You had the experts going delivering it. It's delivering meaningful value in terms of what was there, 93? I think was 93%.
Yeah, it was 93% accuracy we managed to do in a proof of value before we even got it into production. So it's having that value, like you said. And I think we've talked about this before, Leon, as well. I think there's that whole bit of, like I've said, we've talked about lots of different pots of funding, that whether or not you're still doing your migration into the cloud, you're looking at how you can do specific things like with virtual desktops, or if you're further along and you're now looking at more like data and AI, right? There's lots of different pots of funding depending on where a customer is in their journey. What I would say is, and what I see a lot, is those journeys aren't linear, right? You don't have to do this to be able to do this, to be able to do this, right? Don't get me wrong, there are certain things that make life easier. Like, yes, if you've migrated and modernized your estate,
some prerequisites, yeah.
There are some prerequisites, like, but I think the way that I look at it, and the way a lot of businesses now look at it, is how really about you're getting everything AI ready. So it's AI ready infrastructure, right? So that's the way we look at it internally, is everything that we're doing around those bits is kind of getting companies ready to be AI ready, because that is the bit now that everyone is talking about, is AI, the innovation. All organizations know they need to be doing it or want to be doing it, but it's helping them with that. A lot of organizations are pushing to be able to do that AI piece, which is, like you said, probably more the far end. We've got to get some of the other stuff sorted as well. But again, it doesn't have to be linear. We could be looking at helping an organization do some of the lift and shift while also still building out machine learning models for them to really help prove out what AI can help them with. So like I've said, it's not linear. It is very much we can do things in parallel. And it's also about how we can look at an overarching data and AI strategy while we're putting in your data platform and still ideating what those initial AI use cases look like for you. So it's all about how we can help customers speed up the process as well. And that's also where the funding comes in. Again, funding isn't linear. We can access it at different points, and it can be done we can do it in multiple streams as well. So it's really about how, again, when you start at the beginning of this, it's not we want to do this, how do we just use funding to do that one thing? It's like, right, where do you want to get to as a business? Let's help you take you along that journey. And we can do it more quickly because we can do it some of it into parallel for you as well. So you really start to see the value.
Absolutely. I think that's well said. I think there's one other point I think I would like to just cover off before we end this, is Microsoft have actually made some changes to the CSP landscape. So we are a CSP. There are many other CSPs out there. Microsoft seems to have been changing the focus on the way and what CSPs they want to work with and how you qualify to be a CSP or maintain that. Can you just touch on some of those changes to those landscapes, especially kind of what those changes will mean in terms of the audience and what decisions they might make?
Yeah. Of course. And, we've actually got, I think, a couple of upcoming webinars and some pieces that are going out kind of to support this as well. So depending on people in the audience, how long you've been been working with Microsoft, years ago, there was a status tiering system for partners. So you were like a member partner, a silver or a gold. They got rid of that a couple of years ago, and now you become a solution partner. So that is where we get real expertise. Partners really have to prove that they are experts in specific areas, for example, data, AI, infrastructure, security, etc. We have to do this by doing a number of different things. We have performance metrics, security metrics, skilling metrics, etc. So we've got there's a much deeper emphasis on the partners to be able to show their expertise in specific solution areas. And then partners can even go one stage deeper and get specific specializations in certain areas. So for example, as Cloud Direct, we have analytics specialization, the AI specialization, we have a threat protection specialization, etc. Right? These ones are an even deeper level that we have to go to. We have to do specific things for our customers. We have to show certain growth in certain areas. But most predominantly, we get audited by a third party. So a third party comes in, spends a couple of days actually auditing everything that we do and looking at how we do it. So you get this much deeper level of expertise with the partner ecosystem now. So it's really about looking at what solution designations and what specializations partners have to really understand the deep level of expertise that they have. The other side of it, which is a lot more new, is, like you just said, the CSP requirements that they've now put onto partners, right? So Microsoft are now taking obviously security very seriously, and it's no longer good practice. It's mandated to CSP direct partners that we have to comply with specific security requirements. So we now get scored as the partner. We have very specific security scores that we have to do, and it's both for internally. So we have specific things we have to do for our internal systems like MFA and things like that. But then we also have to implement it for our customers as well. So there's things like multi-factor authentication, setting budgets around Azure, things like that. So it's really to enforce a much higher level of security onto the partners, so that we're ensuring that we are putting a higher level of security onto the customers as well, to make them more secure. And a lot of that has been mandated by Microsoft. All direct partners that you work with have to have this in place by the 1st of October this year. So partners.
I don't know. Hopefully, the audience has been through, say, the Cyber Essentials Plus certification. Mm-hmm. Having someone external come in and do an assessment of your security posture inevitably creates a shopping list of remediation activities that you need to go and put in place. And that's kind of the big change that I'm seeing. If the audience have seen like the secure score that they might have in their tenancy, we get assessed not just on our secure score, but our customer secure score as well. So it's bringing that bar up to a much higher level. And what's going to happen is, I think, a number of organizations are going to fall short of that bar. Yeah. And I think that actually has an implication in terms of an organization, a CSP provider, being able to maintain a level of standard. That means we can go and get that funding and that security. Probably needs to factor into the audience decision making when it comes to selecting a partner, because effectively what's going to be available to them isn't necessarily going to be as broad as someone who actually meets the higher standards.
Yeah, exactly that. So the main thing I would say to people on the call is if you're unsure, speak to who your CSP provider partner is. The whole point of that as well, the whole point of the security piece and the solution piece and is having that deeper expertise is so you're actually working with it's not just a reseller, you've actually got a partner who wants to help you strategically develop and look at how you can be, that they can help you to guide you through that journey as well. So it's worth talking to providers around looking at security review, looking at what it is that they can help you with, looking at planning for that long term as well, and making sure that you've got access to, you're taking advantage of all the new offerings from Microsoft, you're looking at all the different new subscription terms that you can look at, and also some of the new products that are coming out. So also, if anybody on the call wants to discuss any of that, I'm more than happy to talk them through it. I believe my email is being put in the chat at the end, and I believe it's been shown on the screen. People are more than welcome to reach out to me, and I can talk through any of the changes with them as well.
Excellent. I think I'm going to, Kim, if you wouldn't mind just putting that email address up one more time. If you do have any questions, please come back. You can put them in the chat now, but I suspect, as I mentioned it, and there's not more coming through. But if you do have any, let us know. What we'll do is we'll respond. We'll create some blogs, and we will respond to any questions that come up. If you have any, specific questions about funding or workshops, I'm sure Sophie can take the funding ones and redirect the workshop ones to me. And so I want to thank you very much, Sophie, because I think that this has been a significant amount of change in the funding landscape. And the opportunity, that non-linear path, I think is something that is different than how things used to be. The depth of funding available is profound, and the ability to be able to do multiple things, modernize and migrate and deliver AI and deliver things that might have been seen as end state rather than that sort of linear journey. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to the audience. Like I say, if you do have any follow-ups, please reach out to us. You all have a wonderful day. Sophie, thanks again.
Thanks very much, guys. Bye.
Thank you.